I mean, one, I have to blame my genetics. And the second is the circumstances that we grew up in. And the third is like me, my own choice. So, from my mom's side, it's heavily communist. So, that means they don't believe in any God. Very, very fun family. But it gave me, it built in a sense of independent streak, like, and also a very inquisitive personality because we were reading a lot. The first question, like I said, is why was I healed?
Hello, everyone. I'm going to be talking with Mamta today, getting to know more about her story, her life, and more importantly, about Jesus Christ. Hi, Mamta.
Hi.
Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience growing up.
My name is Mamta and I'm married to Sandeep Pasupuleti. I have two kids. One is 10-year-old and one is 4-year-old. I come from a Hindu background. We all know the minute we give out a surname, that means we know where we come from, which the things. I'm born, brought up in the city of Hyderabad. Grew up my entire life there, worked in the corporate for, I think, around 13, 14 years, and moved into pursuing the academic side of mine. Right now in the US, pursuing a PhD. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's quite a change.
yeah.
Share with us your childhood journey and how you were introduced to Jesus in your childhood years.
Uh, Mine, I wouldn't say I was introduced to Jesus. I see him as a God who sought us. So at the age of 1, I was diagnosed with viral meningitis. Like, I'm born in 84, I don't have a problem in sharing my age. So 84, Hyderabad, I think they had certain riots or something like that happening, and the only hospital that was open was ESI hospital. It's a Catholic hospital. So my mom was working then, and that was also the place of her insurance. So she took me there, and I think whoever was available there, they said she's gonna die, because as a child who's less than a year, the brain is, the skull over your brain is not fused. So I had like two visible huge lumps or tumors, is what my mom described. So I had that, and it's viral meningitis. There was no cure, and they said the brain tissue is already swollen, running with high temperature. Just take her back home. She's gonna die. We don't have the resources to handle her there. My mom went back. My dad was not in the city then. He had his business, so he was traveling. Uh, and my mom was like, she just left me in a room, and those days there was no cell phone, so she had to go to a neighbor's house to call, and I'm the first one in my house. So by the time she could make a call and come back, I was totally healed. But what she always told me was, she always narrated the story to me while I was growing up, like, you know, things could have been different. She said on the way out, she saw a cross, and she only had 2 rupees, the Indian rupees. So she just like, she put that in the box. It's a Catholic uh, hospital, so she put those $2, 2 rupees in the drop box and said, "I don't know if you're even a god," but she knelt down and said that, and but if you're a living God, just heal her. I will believe you. And she walked home. So, and when she experienced this miracle, that's what she said. Like, everything changed. Like, I put you in a room, made a call, and came back. The fever was gone. It never came back, and the lumps were gone. Like, the whole tissue came back to normalcy. So that was a story that I was told. But otherwise, I come from a proper Hindu Kshatriya family. I'm from Hyderabad. Yeah. So
Yeah, thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, and knowing you as a person, you are a very curious person, and please tell me how God has wired you and what are the questions you ask?
yeah, I think God. I mean, one, I have to blame my genetics. And the second is the circumstances that we grew up in, and the third is like me, my own choices. So, in all ways, genetically, I think I'm blessed with family who are always adventurous. They don't like the traditional, um, they are part of the society, but like they always encourage us to be independent and not just accept anything that comes your way. So that is like one of the atheistic streak that we have. So my family, partly we had mixed culture. From my mom's side, it's heavily communist. So that means they don't believe in any god. And then my dad's side had a little mixture. So my grandfather was a veterinary doctor, but he's a Hindu, but he really didn't care. My dad was like, he didn't care what I did as a child. He's an atheist too. My sister landed up being atheistic. So in these situations, I had the privilege of not just pursuing a god or no god. It didn't matter to them. So that's like all, it kind of gives you that space and freedom to be very independent and self, seeking different things. uh, and the other thing is, I mean, my family also they love to study. I know of my aunts, like imagine those days they had double masters and triple masters. So they loved, like they studied after wedding and they are in government jobs. So they have this adventurous side. There's a little liberty that we have. There's also this curious minds that they built into us, and for us we grew up with a big joint family. Half of them landed up. I mean, we have more boys. I think in my house. So I grew up like a proper tomboy. So I have like that streak of the personality is like a very tomboy personality that, and combined with this, it always gave me a curious mind. At, at least till I was 10, my parents never forced me. I never remembered having an altar in my house. Because if I went into my dad and told that, I went to this God or gave him an offering, he's like, I'm God, why are you wasting your money on a God? He'd be so, against giving an offering to any God for that matter. So he was like that for a season. Never had an altar. The only experience of a Hindu culture I had is like when my grandmother was in our house. She's like, she was heavy in terms of she would never eat. She's a vegetarian. All that. Though Kshatriyas are allowed to eat meat, she was vegetarian. She would in there's certain months I think are supposed to be auspicious. She would take a shower. Only then we would get breakfast when she's around. But otherwise, we come from like a atheistic culture majority of my life. But there's also this Hindu aspect in our family. Plus, yeah, we are adventurous and yeah, it's very very fun family. But it gave me it built in a sense of independent streak, like, and also a very inquisitive personality because we were reading a lot. I think some of my family members, they just all they read is like they have a target for a year, like, oh, I need to read 15 books for this year. And they're secular atheists, but they just love reading. So we have both sides to it, yeah.
Yeah. Hearing your mom narrate the story of how you were healed, what were specific questions that were lingering in your mind that you were seeking answers for?
I think that those questions were the very reason I began the search about God. My first thing at the age of probably 5, I always had this lingering thing. I have an atheist, like they don't believe in any gods. I'm like, if my mom went and prayed at that church, not knowing who the God is, why was I healed? It's not my story. Like, it's just been passed on to me. Okay, I've not seen that miracle. Probably the miracle was for my mother. Like, how did that happen? So that was my first question, because my family, I think my mother and my dad's wedding was like they exchanged garlands in Arya Samaj and they got married literally. There was no, like, the Hindu rituals, so something like that. So if my family, we had this two mixed streaks of thought, uh, how is that I was healed? That was the first question. And the second question, even if I go by my grandmother's thing of, there is a God, then why is that this God did not heal me? That's a thought. Like, is he really a God? Or if there's so many gods, like, is Jesus the special God who healed me? So those are some questions that I always had like a child. Yeah. So
Yeah. So, as you are growing up with these questions, and you are facing specific challenges in your life, right? Tell us a little bit about how you mentioned that Jesus came after you. So tell us a little bit more about that experience.
yeah. The first question, like I said, is why was I healed? I could have been left there to be dead. Why was I healed? The first question is like the life begins to, as I was growing up, I have a very, very good uh, family life, like in terms of my cousins and everybody. I grew up in a beautiful bubble. And it could have happened with so many people, but why did that happen to me? What was, um, that's something that puzzled me. Like, he could have just, even if God existed, he could have done that to somebody else, right? Like, why me? I know I was in need, but God met me at that point. But the other gods, my grandmother has to do so many things to appease. Like, for example, I remember festivals were anyway one not like a very ritual based for me. For us, it was more for fun, except for my grandmother and probably one of my aunt. Um, they do the Ganesha puja, right? They put a book. So I remember every time when they have the Ganesh Chaturthi, you take all your books, leave it at the altar. The whole thing is like the Ganesha is always put in weddings and as an idol because he's supposed to take away uh, any hindrances that can happen, for example, in a wedding, or he's the giver of, he takes away every obstacle for that auspicious thing to happen. So that was one of the ritual we would do. I would like, why am I even behaving so transactionally to God? So the other question I remember, because my grandmother was reading out Bhagavad Gita, and she's the one who would force us to when she was taking care of us, she would put in this. Obviously, she's doing whatever she thought was right. So one of the questions I had when she was talking about Rama, um, the story of it really cringed me for that. I mean, as a child, the story goes on like when Rama was trying to get Sita back from Lanka, he meets one guy and he kills him from behind the tree. He sneaks in and kills the one of the Vanara assigned him, no, the one of the person he kills. I'm like, if he was really a god, why does he have to be so sneaky? If first of all he's the owner of everything and everything, he's he's supposed to be creating the world, and why would a god who is God have to behave in a very sneaky way? Those are some of the questions that I was exposed to, and also the culture. So for me, like, oh, it was not somehow sinking in my mind because of my curious, logical personality. So those were some things that really drove me the other side.
Yeah. So you come from a family where there's who they
Yeah.
love reading and
Yeah.
they keep reading, right? And now you are asking a lot of questions. Now, how did this direct you to the Bible? How did you start reading the Bible? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, one of the best thing that happened to me, I guess, is like, yeah, the miracle was there. My mom kept communicating, but eventually she was not very strong because there was this pressure of keeping within your caste system. So we have this mindset of, okay, if you convert, you lose your status, your high caste, right? Like Kshatriyas, Brahman, Kshatriyas, like the kings. So you lose that caste system. So my mom she gave up in terms of she wanted to keep the family together. So if you're converting from this thing, you actually go down to a real low caste. It may not be true, but that was the mindset people had. So she was, in a sense, she was forced from her, immediate thing. She had to really not continue that in my life. One of the good things that my parents did is they put me in a Christian school. Not for anything, but we have the reputation of them being really good schools. So in the school, we had this couple they actually didn't have children. Uh, I was also a good student, so, and this is a very small school. So they wanted me to live with them in the hostel. So I would go to the school, which is a Christian school, but I was also given this opportunity to stay with them so that I do academically well, and it also kind of builds the reputation of school. So that's where I accepted the Lord, and my parents didn't know about it.
Yeah.
But not that I was very strong. This happened at the age of 10. But after I finished my schooling, I went back home around age of 13. Yeah, that's when I faced the reality. Yeah.
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 So now, through your life, you faced many challenges, right? And how were you able to face those challenges, and what made you stronger?
Yeah, I think when the rubber meets the road, it's not easy at all. I think when I finished my high school, I was 13 and a half. Thank God there were no rules then. So 13 and a half, I went back home. But before that, at the age of 10, I remember there's this promise verse that came to me. I can read it for you from 41:10. I didn't have my own Bible also by then. It was just whatever was in school, and Bibles were expensive then. So there's this promise verse, how the new year they just give you these promise cards. I had that, and that is from Isaiah 41:10. It said, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." So this is what I read. I think somewhere like I got my chance to open the Bible again, and I just, this radical, it's not a right way of reading the word. Now I know, but I just opened and said, God, whatever you lead me, I'll follow that. And that was the exact verse that came back once or twice. So it's like, even if you call that a chance, but that came to me. But for a 10-year-old, that was a precious. I remember keeping that for really long, and that was my only verse. When I was 13 and a half, I finished my high school, went back home. Finally, I sneaked in and saved up $110. When you tie Rakis, I get money from my brothers because I have big brother, big group of brothers. I had a lot of money. So with that money, I know I asked one of my friends to buy me a Bible. That was the first Bible I had when I was 14 years old. That's when I began to read the Bible. This from 13 on was a very challenging period, but I see how the Lord has been faithful in holding me through that. Um, One of the way was I would go to college in the I studied in a Catholic college. If the college started at 8:30, I would take the earliest bus and stay. I would take this Bible, sneak it in my bag. I would read in the college and come back home. I think eventually my parents were like, not for it. So I had to literally hide. So I was also preparing for my medical entrance. So I would pile up like 10 books and I put my Bible. My dad would think I was actually pretending I was reading the Bible, and I would put 10 books over it. So I was actually tricking. It's not a nice thing to do now, but I was tricking him to, I was reading the Bible, but he assumed I was doing my regular college. The other thing is like, I would read it in the bathroom. I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning before everybody gets up in the house. I would go read it in the bathroom, put in my clothes, wrap it in, and come back into my room. Because though my dad was not for any religion, or my mom for that matter, my mom like kind of, didn't have the opportunity to pursue that, or this newfound God, though she had some curiousness towards him. But she gave me the liberty to do that. But when I hit my teenage, somehow these parents have this concept that I'll never get married, because if anybody in my caste knows that I'm a Christian, they wouldn't ever marry me. For them, it's forbidding, or getting rid of their own caste system. There'll be public humiliation for them, right? Like if I marry outside my caste, it's like a big thing. So they wanted to actually get rid of this whole Christianity in me because of that situation. Yeah. Like marriage was a huge concern for them, so they didn't want to encourage my Christian faith.
Mamta, growing up, you faced many challenges, And how did you find strength to face those challenges, and what made you stronger?
I think one of the only source of my strength and hope was Christ. And the only way I knew him more is through the word. So my first logic again was like, who else do I have apart from God? And if I have to know God, and this is the only way I know him. So I spent like so much of time so hungry for God's word. Like, I know the first time I read the Bible, I finished the whole Bible in 33 days.
Wow.
So imagine how hungry I was. And I did that in the bathroom while I was going to college, while I was on the way back, or hiding things. So the 33 days I just finished the Bible. And one of the words or the passage that stuck me was from Romans 5, 3 and onwards. I could just read that to you. Um, yeah, the verse starts off this way. It says, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. I just love this verse. I think even now, I just, like, whenever I go through the hardest time, this has been like a verse that comforts me because it gives you a purpose. So I really love the word. It says, rejoice in our sufferings. It's hard to do, but knowing that suffering produces endurance, and it did. It did in me for a season. I didn't like it. I didn't like the suffering, but it did produce endurance, and it did, it actually prevented me from a lot of wrong steps like any teenager could have taken. It did build in a certain character. And then I had that hope that God is going to someday rescue me out of this. And even if he didn't rescue me, he's still God. But he built in the character in me. He built in that endurance in me. And this was something that I held on. And I've seen my life transform eventually. And I do have hope. I'm married to a good husband, a godly husband, which probably as a teenager, I never thought I would ever marry. Because who's going to come marry a Christian, a believer coming from this, who the whole family is like, oh, this is a hard thing, right? So I never had that hope. But, if I look back at my life, it is God who just took me from that. But in that process, he molded me in a certain way for whatever purposes, yeah.
Yeah. God's love poured into your heart to produce endurance and hope. Yeah, thank you for sharing that verse. What has been your anchor point in your life?
I think even before I ever read the Bible, I know how you get this New Year cards, the promise cards, and I picked up the verse from Isaiah 41:10, and that was the only verse that I ever had before I actually read the Bible. It says, again, I'm reading it out for you. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. This is what kept me. I knew this Lord somehow struck my heart, and he's never going to let loose. And even if everything happened, do I have any other rock? I don't have any hope. I didn't have hope in my friends or anybody to come and help me in this, but my only hope was God. So this was one of the anchor point or anchor verse, I would say, that kept me grounded. At the same time, it helped me always to look forward. Otherwise, it's so easy to break and crumble, especially as a teenager. I think there were so many days that there was like not a single night I ever didn't cry and go to sleep. Now if I ask, like, I don't know how I had that courage. Probably now if I look, I'm like much older than what I am. And I'm like, I don't know, God, where did you give me that strength to endure, not knowing enough? But somehow I feel like the Lord was there protecting me and, leading me to what he has for me now. I just see God's hand, and I think I would definitely give him the credit, like how he sought out for me at the age of 1, that continued, and I just see that hand of God in my life, in
Yeah.
everything.
Amazing. Now, this Jesus, you have been on a journey with this Jesus for so long.
Yeah.
Tell us about this journey now.
It's a beautiful journey. I think the best thing that happened to me, I always tell my husband, he'd been my escape plan out of my house. So the first day, I think we were married when I was 24. It was beautiful that the Lord finally allowed. Like, it was only one person, my grandfather, who said yes to him, and we got married. So that itself was a big, burden out of me, and he just gave me this freedom to explore. I remember going to church in complete freedom is only after I got married to my husband. Till then, it was always like struggle, or it's constant wrestling. But it's only with my husband that I could freely worship. I remember celebrating Christmas for the first time with my own family. That was such a beautiful experience. I think the year we got married, I think my husband and I don't know, it's very strange that we were married because we've never dated. I probably, the week he proposed to me, the Monday, by Saturday my wedding was fixed with him. So I was like, it's a short thing, but it was a beautiful surprise from God for me. And when I think we were getting married, the first thing is like, oh, I want this, or no. For me, I'm like, okay, I want to study further. Would you be okay with it? Then I'll get married. So the minute we got married, we both started our MDiv. The first year we were married, and from then to all the 13 years I've been only studying. So but I'm just growing in the Lord. Right now I'm pursuing a PhD, my in ancient languages and Semitic language, especially the Hebrew. And I love learning it, and that's what drew me to the PhD too, because I want to learn and read the word in the original language. I don't want any translator, so that's the only thing that drove me to pursue that. So
Okay. Yeah. That's great.
yeah.
You're continuing the voracious reading
I
habit
hope
of your
to
family.
be done in a year and a half. Let's see. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mamta, what would you like to share with someone who's watching this video, who's on a similar journey like you?
I would say just give Jesus a shot, and don't let that be a manipulative experience, or because somebody said that. Because if somebody brought you into it, or bought you into it just by telling their story, and you didn't experience, you'll be that quick enough to leave it. But if you pursue it on your own, be fully convinced, then you'll persevere in it. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that, if somebody told you that that's not your story, just have this beautiful walk with God, experience him, and give him a shot, and that story will be yours. It'll be fully yours, and not just you know any other's influence. I just want you guys to be encouraged in that. Uh, I would also say that God doesn't completely take you through or take away every negative aspect in your life. Like I gave that verse for you, that when you go through suffering, God builds your endurance, and endurance, builds character, and character hope. So don't. God is not a magic formula out of your trouble. And one thing I really love about Christ, he doesn't offer a cheap substitute for repentance. That means just because I just ask for forgiveness, God cleanses me, yes, but he still leaves you with consequences. If you hurt somebody, go back, reconcile. This is the only religion that met the needs of my heart plus my mind, and it doesn't offer a cheap substitute of repentance or forgiveness like the rest of the religions in the world do. So I would say the final comment would be, it's not my own, it's borrowed, and it's stuck in my mind all my life. It says, religions are man's pursuit of God, but gospel is Christ's pursuit of man. So just give it a try and see if this God is really for you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mamta. Thank you for sharing your story. Friends, if you're watching this video, this Jesus is ready to pour out His love into your heart so that you can face any suffering and have that endurance in life. For more stories like this, visit yeshusamaj.org. Thank you.